In 2025, the value of money is falling, and what the man who first saw this did 60 years ago. The documented record is here. I want to be honest with you for a second. I don't make videos to create fear. I don't think producing doomsday scenarios is a financial strategy. But lately, maybe you felt it too. You look at your bank account and something feels wrong. Not completely broken, not completely ruined, just wrong. Like the rules you built your life on are being quietly rewritten. That feeling, it has a name, and it has a documented record, because someone felt that exact same feeling in 1965. His name was Charles de Gaulle. He was the President of France, and instead of ignoring it, he acted. The next steps took 44 ship voyages, 129 flights in 3 years, and by the time everyone realized what had happened, it was already too late. Today I'm going to tell you exactly what he saw, exactly what he did, and most importantly, why the signal he read in 1965 looks almost identical to what you can see right now, today. You just need to know where to look. Stay with me, because the last 5 minutes of this video is the part that will actually change how you think. There is a fear more specific than inflation. It's not prices are going up. Everyone knows that fear. This is different. This is the fear that the currency you saved in, the one you worked decades to earn, the one your retirement is built on, has quietly begun to lose the world's respect. That it has gone from being an anchor to being the problem. If you felt this while watching the news, watching the dollar, this video is for you, because the forensic record of this moment exists. Documented, and it doesn't begin in 2026. Paris, February 4th, 1965. Charles de Gaulle is standing at a press conference at the Élysée Palace. He's not speaking like a politician. He's speaking like a man who has studied what happens when the world's anchor currency starts to drift, because he lived through the last time it happened. He witnessed how his country's reserves were destroyed when England devalued sterling in 1931. He swore that France would never be caught holding paper promises when the music stopped again. And looking into the camera, he said what no head of government had dared say since the war. What the United States owes to foreign countries is paid, at least in part, with dollars it can simply print if it chooses. He then ordered the Bank of France to convert all of France's dollar reserves into physical gold and bring it home. Operation Vider les Poches, empty the pockets, continued for 3 years. 44 ship voyages, 129 flights. 3,313 tons of gold left the vaults of the Federal Reserve in New York and the Bank of England in London and arrived in Paris. 6 years later, Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar could no longer be converted to gold at any price. Gold rose from $35 per ounce to $850 in 9 years. The countries that trusted the guarantee, they found that what they had been holding was a currency that had lost, depending on how you measure it, between 87 and 96% of its purchasing power against gold in 9 years. De Gaulle didn't predict the exact date. He simply saw the signals everyone else was ignoring and acted. Before we get to today, I promise, we will, I need to show you the forensic record. Because the most dangerous thing about what is happening right now is that it doesn't look like a crisis. It never does, at least not at first. September 18th, 1949, a Sunday. The Chancellor of the Exchequer goes on BBC radio and tells the British people that the pound has been devalued by 30.5%. 2 weeks earlier, exactly 2 weeks, he had stood at the podium in Parliament and stated with complete confidence, "His Majesty's government has not the slightest intention of devaluing the pound." 14 days, categorical denial, then 30% devaluation. The British saver who heard that guarantee on September 4th held pounds worth $4.30 each. By September 19th, those same pounds were worth $2.80. No warning, no right of appeal, no compensation. Here is what the long-term forensic record shows for ordinary British savers. In 1913, the pound bought nearly $5. London was the banker to the world. More than 60% of international trade was invoiced in sterling. Sterling was not merely money. It was the anchor of the global financial system. By 1950, it bought $4. In 1967, Prime Minister Harold Wilson devalued it again on a Saturday night to $2.40. Then the next morning, he went on television and said, "The pound in your pocket has not been devalued." Technically true in terms of domestic prices. In terms of international purchasing power, it was false. By 2026, the pound buys approximately $1.27, 74% below its pre-war value, not in a single crash. In a succession of controlled retreats, each framed as a temporary adjustment, each accompanied by assurances that everything was fine. The people who came through best were not those who predicted every devaluation. No ordinary saver can do that with precision. They were the people who held assets not denominated in sterling, land, productive property, foreign currency accounts, physical gold, not because of genius, because of a structural understanding. The currency losing reserve status always makes the same promises and always breaks them the same way. Now, we come to the event most directly relevant to what you are experiencing today. August 15, 1971, a Sunday evening, Nixon addresses the nation from the Oval Office. He says the dollar will be stabilized. He says this will protect the dollar from, and I'm quoting directly, international money speculators. The price of gold that morning, $35 per ounce, fixed for 27 years. December 1971, $43. 1973, $100. January 1980, $850. $35 to $850, 9 years. A 2,329% nominal gain for anyone who held physical gold. Those who kept their savings in treasury bonds and dollar accounts across that same period lost approximately 70 to 87% of their real purchasing power. Not from a stock market crash, not from a bank failure, from a policy choice, made on a Sunday evening, announced without warning, framed as protection. Nixon's exact words that night: "Let me lay to rest the boogaboo of what is called devaluation. If you're among the overwhelming majority of Americans who buy American-made products in America, your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today." By 1980, consumer prices had doubled from 1971 levels. Those who trusted that sentence lost approximately 70 to 87% of their savings purchasing power in real terms. The real difference between those who lost and those who didn't was not intelligence. It was the decision to hold something outside the institution that would make the announcement. Made years before the Sunday evening announcement, I want to explain the 4 forensic principles that each of these cases establishes, because these are not theories. They are patterns in documented primary source history. First principle: the guarantee is the last thing to go, but it always goes. Not the slightest intention of devaluing. Your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow. The pound in your pocket has not been devalued. The language of reassurance is a structural feature of every reserve currency transition. The officials delivering it usually genuinely believe it. They are wrong, every single time. Second principle: The transition is gradual, and then it happens all at once. The British pound lost reserve status across 40 years of visible signals. The dollar's Bretton Woods commitment eroded across a decade of visible signals before August 1971. In both cases, the careful saver had years to act. You don't need to time the sudden event. You need to read the gradual signal. Third principle, physical assets outside the institutional system are the documented survivors, not gold, ETFs. Those are claims on gold held by an institution. Not treasury bonds. Those are claims on a government's promise. Privately held physical metal. Land under direct personal control. Foreign currency held outside the banking system. These are the assets that survived 1931, 1949, 1967, and 1971, because they are the assets that cannot be devalued by a Sunday evening announcement. Fourth principle. Watch what central banks do, not what governments say. When de Gaulle was converting dollars to gold in 1963, the U.S. Treasury was publicly confident about the dollar's stability. The gap between what central banks do and what governments say, that is the signal. That has been the signal in every reserve currency transition in the documented record. Now let me explain why I'm making this video right now in 2026, because the signal has become visible again, and I want to show it to you. The Mar-a-Lago Accord is not a rumor or a theory. It is a published policy document written by Stephen Moran, who became chair of the Council of Economic Advisers. Its central thesis, the dollar is overvalued as a result of its reserve currency status, and this should be corrected through deliberate depreciation. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has publicly described what he calls a grand global economic reordering. The dollar fell approximately 10% on a trade-weighted basis in 2025. These are not the statements of a government committed to defending the dollar's purchasing power. These are the statements of a government that has decided to use the dollar's reserve currency status as a lever. The framing is identical to 1971. The dollar will be stabilized, rebalanced, made fair. The mechanism is the same, the official language is the same, and meanwhile central banks are acting exactly as de Gaulle acted in 1963. More than 3,000 tons of gold purchased in 3 years. The highest sustained buying rate since records began in the 1950s. Poland, which lived through its own hyperinflation in 1923, and knows what reserve currency faith costs when that faith breaks, is the world's most aggressive gold buyer, targeting 20% of national reserves in physical metal. The gap between what central banks are doing and what governments are saying about currency stability. It is the same gap that existed between 1963 and 1971. The institutions that manage the world's reserves are converting paper claims to physical metal at the highest sustained rate in modern history. These are not the actions of institutions confident in the permanent stability of the current system. Here is the closing forensic verdict. De Gaulle did not need to predict August 15, 1971. He only needed to read what the structural signals were already saying. The fiscal position of the issuer, the gap between reserves and obligations, the language of reassurance delivered 2 weeks before the guarantees break. The reserve currency's promise is only as durable as the fiscal position of the country that issues it. When that position deteriorates beyond a recoverable threshold, the promise is not kept. It was not kept for sterling in 1931. It was not kept in 1949. It was not kept in 1967. It was not kept in 1971. The person who holds physical metal outside the institutional system today is not predicting when the announcement will come. They are making a structural observation about what the announcement will say, when it does. Before you go, I want to make one thing clear. Don't panic. Don't liquidate everything. I'm telling you what the forensic record shows. And the forensic record shows this. The people who acted on the gradual signal, quietly, early, without drama, were the ones who had something left when the Sunday evening announcement came. De Gaulle built it before he needed it. That was the only part of his strategy that actually mattered. If this changed your perspective on what you're watching, subscribe. This channel is built on primary sources and documented outcomes, not predictions, not fear, just the forensic record of what actually happened. So you can decide for yourself what it means. And leave a comment. Which signal concerns you more right now? The dollar weakening, the central bank buying, or the policy language? I read every single one.